Lesson 3, representing proportional relationships with equations. The proportional relationship have a constant ratio or unit rate. The constant ratio or unit rate, y over x, can also be called the constant of proportionality. How could we use what we know about the constant of proportionality to write an equation? Well, three things. One, unit rate is the constant of proportionality. Next, proportional relationship relates two things. And next, to write an equation, set up a proportion. Okay. So first, example 1 says Casey and her 3 friends attend a movie. The total cost of the tickets was $28. What is the cost per ticket? Well, 28 divided by 3 equals 9 1/3. Okay. Write an equation that represents this situation. Well, to write an equation, we would have to set it up. Y over x equals 9 1/3 over 1. So when we cross multiply, we have y equals 9 1/3 x. Next, it says the cost of 4 apples at the store is $5. What is the cost of per apple? So 5 divided by 4 is 1.25. So write an equation that represents this situation. So y over x equals 1.25 over 1. When we cross multiply, we have y equals 1.25x. Okay? Next. It says your mother has accelerated onto the interstate beginning a long road trip, and you notice that the low fuel light is on, indicating that there is a half gallon left in the gas tank. The nearest gas station is 26 miles away. Your mother keeps a log where she records the mileage and the number of gallons purchased each time she fills up the tank. Use the information in the table below to determine whether you will make it to the gas station before the gas runs out. You know that if you can determine the amount of gas that her car consumes in a particular number of miles, then you can determine whether or not you can make it to the gas station. Okay, so now, okay, And before I forget, guys, okay, to set up a proportion, we have to do y equals y over x equals k over 1 and cross multiply, so that now we have y equals kx, and this is going to be our general equation. Sorry about that, guys. And that's very important. Okay? So here we go. The first thing is always make sure that you label. The left side is always going to be your x column. Your right side normally will be your right. Very seldom is that different. Okay? It can be, but most of the time it won't be. When you set this up, it will always be my y value over my x. Your y value is always your dependent value. Your x is always your independent value. Dependent means you can't do without the other. Independent means you can. I can have gallons of gas and not go anywhere, but I can't drive anywhere without having gas in the car. So here it says find the constant of proportionality and explain what it means. Well, here, first of all, we've got to make sure that it is proportional. By that, we've got to divide each of these. Again, y over x. So 224 divided by 8, and we get 28. 280 divided by 10 equals 28. And 112 divided by 4 is 28. Now remember, when you divide these and they all equal the same, that number that you get, this number here, that 28 is your unit rate. It is your constant of proportionality. So what this means is my mother can drive 28 miles on 1 gallon of gas. Okay? So next it says, write equations that will relate the miles driven to the number of gallons of gas. Okay? In other words, y equals kx. So here, to relate the miles and the gallons, miles and gallons, my miles equals my constant of proportionality times my gallons. Okay? So we're relating the miles driven to the number of gallons of gas. Now, knowing that there is a half a gallon left in the gas tank when the light comes on, will she make it to the nearest gas station? Explain why or why not. Well, if we take the 28 as a half a gallon of gas, so 28 times 1/2, that gives us 14. Okay, the answer is no. Because the gas station is 26 miles away. And she only has enough gas to go 14 miles. Okay. Now, using the equation found in part B, this equation here, determine how far your mother can travel on 18 gallons of gas. Well, the M stands for miles. The G stands for gas. And remember, K is our constant of proportionality, which is going to be 28. So M equals 28 times 18, which equals 504 miles. The next question says, using the constant of proportionality and then using the equations, we're going to do both, found in part B, determine how many gallons of gas would be needed to travel 750 miles. Well, if I use the constant of proportionality, I can take the 750 and divide it by the number of miles, the 28, that I get per gallon. And that tells me I can go 26.785, 714, 29 gallons. If I use the equation, M equals 28 gallons. And I replace the miles with 750. And I divide both sides by 28. You'll find I get the same answer. Okay. Next, Andrea's portraits. Andrea is a street artist in New Orleans. She draws caricatures, cartoon-like portraits of tourists. People have their portrait drawn and then come back later to pick it up from her. The graph below shows the relationship between the number of portraits she draws and the amount of time and hours she needs to draw the portraits. Write several ordered pairs from the graph and explain what each ordered pair means in the context of this graph. Well, the first point I'm going to point out is 2, 3, which is right here. So 2, 3, remember our x value here goes first and then our y, means for every two hours, she draws 3 portraits. Next, I have 4 and 6. This means for every 4 hours, she draws 6 portraits. And last, we have, 6 and 9. And that means for every 6 hours, she draws 9 portraits. Okay. Now it says determine the constant of proportionality and explain what it means in this situation. Well, if I take the y value, which is 3, and divide that by 2, I get 1.5. Okay. And what that means is for every 1.5 hours, she can draw. Oh, I'm sorry, for every hour. I'm sorry. She can draw 1.5 portraits. It says write several equations that would relate the number of portraits drawn to the time spent drawing the portraits. So for this, the one equation that I'm more worried about, and the one that we should use, is for here we have y equals kx. And that would be for our constant of proportionality, which is what this is. If I replace it, I get y equals 1.5 x. Okay. And I believe that is our lesson for the day.